Whoever acted like making YouTube videos wasn't a full-time gig, you can go right to hell. This is hard. Okay. Hello, welcome back to the Greenity channel. I'm going to be doing something a little bit different today, kind of more in the spirit of simplifying vegan food and also breaking down barriers to access to vegan food. I'm going to be making some apple muffins, but I'm out of everything and I don't feel like going to the grocery store, so I'm going to try using what I have, which I'm not super comfortable with, but hopefully you'll enjoy the ride. Now, what makes me uncomfortable about this is that I can't promise it's going to turn out. I've learned with baking that using replacements kind of at your own will and making things up as you go doesn't really work most of the time. But I have a lot of trust in myself. I have a lot of trust in the ingredients that I do have. So we're gonna make this happen. Let me run you through everything that we're using. Now, I know I said I'm gonna simplify it, and it's gonna feel like it's getting really complicated really fast because there's a lot going on. But the more you bake and the more you keep these ingredients in your pantry, the easier it becomes, I promise. So obviously we're making apple muffins, so I'm using 2 apples. I started slicing one already. And I mean, this is how badly I need groceries. I don't know how much of this apple we'll actually get to use, but we're gonna try. And then if you bake often, you know that it's pretty standard to bake with a dry ingredient bowl and then a wet ingredient bowl. Okay, let's start with our dry ingredients. In a smaller mixing bowl, medium to large size, but not the largest, I'm going to put 2.5 cups of sifted flour. If you don't have a sifter, that is totally fine. Use what you got. I also find it's helpful if you don't have a sifter or one of these little strainers to just pour the flour in and then use a whisk. A little whisk works really well to whisk through the flour, and that kind of breaks it up and makes it smoother. So 2 1/3 cups of this, and then 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda, 2 teaspoons of baking powder. I used, I think, 2 teaspoons of cinnamon and then about 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, and then a pinch of salt. And then we're going to whisk the dry mix together and set this aside. Black is not the color to wear when you're working with flour and baking. For our wet ingredients, we're going to use 3/4 cup of almond milk in this cute little mixing cup I have. A tablespoon of vanilla. This is where it's going to seem like it's getting complicated. Stick with me. We're using 2/3 cups of brown sugar. We're gonna cream the sugar and the butter. Since I'm not using butter, I'm using shortening. We're using this exactly the same way that we would use butter. So 2/3 cups. And I told myself I will post this regardless of if they turn out or don't turn out. So before we cream this, let's make the buttermilk. So to make buttermilk, I shared this in my biscuits and gravy video, but we just need 3/4 cups of milk and then about a tablespoon or 2 of some sort of citric acid. I'm going to use lemon juice this time. So I'm juicing 1/2 lemon that I had left over to get about 2 tablespoons. You can use less than that. So that will create our buttermilk. I'm just gonna give that a whirl. Let that sit and let it react. The next thing we need to do is we're going to make an egg replacement. A really good and a really easy access egg replacement is flaxseed. You can buy already ground or milled flaxseed. I wasn't able to find that when I bought flaxseed, so I bought whole ones and I'm using a pestle and mortar to ground them. So the ratio to use flaxseed to make eggs is 1 tablespoon of ground flaxseed with 3 tablespoons of warm water. So I'm going to use 2 eggs for this recipe. So I'm grounding 2 tablespoons of flaxseed and then I'll put in 6 tablespoons of warm water. Okay, ground that up. Okay, here's 6 tablespoons of warm water. Pour those in and then I'm gonna take my whisk. You can use a fork, mix this up. It is important that the water is warm so that it thickens the flax seeds and allows it to, I don't know, work like eggs work, I guess. Set that aside. Let both of these sit for about 5-10 minutes. Our buttermilk has already separated itself, so we're doing good there. Now let's mix our butter and sugar. Okay, not my best. Do this on a lower power. Okay, that will do. Listen, there are less average channels out there that you could be watching. If it's expertise you're looking for or perfection, look elsewhere. I'm so sorry. All right, so now we're gonna mix all the other wet ingredients into this, I think. I have my little notebook. Now I'm feeling nervous. Oh, whatever, let's do it. Buttermilk, 1 tablespoon of vanilla, and then our egg mix. If your egg mix has sat long enough, it should have thickened. It might have the texture of like undercooked oatmeal. That should be good. Pour your eggs in there. I'm gonna give the wet mixture a mix of its own on really low. I hope, I don't know. Cool, it's gonna be a little lumpy like that. I don't know if it's supposed to be, but it always is when I do it. And then we pour our dry mix in. We've got a muffin mix. The great thing about muffin mix is you can just pour this into a bread tin or a thin cake pan and make like a loaf of bread with it. Bread, I have a leftover loaf of apple bread right here from a few days ago. This is a great way to use your staple ingredients, any leftover ingredients. If you have fruit that's about to go bad, just throw it into a muffin mix. While we cut the apples and throw those in the mix, I'm going to preheat my oven to 375 Fahrenheit. Okay, so I definitely recommend peeling your apples, but you don't have to. They'll bake just fine. I think some people like them better in baked goods when they're peeled because the skin gets a little too soft. But I'm just doing little tiny chunks like this. Since we're making just muffins, we don't want super large chunks. And as I cut, I'm just gonna throw them in the batter. And I'm just using 2 apples. I think that's plenty. You probably want it to equal about 2 cups of apples. Okay, so this apple had a little spot on it, but it seems fine otherwise, so we're gonna use it. Okay, let me mix this and see where we're at with the apple. We'll just use it up and I'll eat the last slice. All right, let's candy some nuts. Candying nuts is actually super easy. I'm using about a 1/4 cup of nuts, maybe a little more. And I'm just going to turn a small skillet onto like medium heat, and I'm gonna throw them all in. Mine are already chunked. I bought them in pieces, so they're fine. You're welcome to cook these in oil or butter, kind of whatever you want. I'm just doing water and sugar, kind of like a simple syrup situation. So I'm going to use just granulated sugar this time. I used brown sugar for the muffins, but I'm just gonna use regular sugar. I'm gonna do about a 1/4 cup, a little less probably, so not even, like an 1/8 of a cup. And then I'm gonna throw in some water. I'll throw in a little bit for right now to kind of absorb that sugar and let it do its thing. So turn those to like a medium-high heat and let them cook. While that's happening, let's put our muffins in the pan. So I don't use muffin tins. I find them to be wasteful, unless of course I'm giving muffins out or serving them somewhere. Usually I'm just eating them at home and I don't see a need to peel back a muffin tin. I know there's really great silicone muffin tins that I have my eyes on, but I'm not there yet. So all I'm going to do is coat my muffin tin with some oil and then flour so that the muffins come out really easy. So I have a little bowl here. I'll just pour a little bit of oil in, then I'm just gonna use my fingers and go around each tin. Okay, perfect, and then I'm going to coat in a little bit of flour. Okay, we don't need a lot of flour. It's just to help keep the muffins from sticking. Then I'm gonna take this over to the sink and shake it all out, and that's it. I'm just going to use a quarter of a cup scoop to pour the batter into these. Make sure that I have a nice amount of apples in each scoop, but also a nice amount of batter. I'm gonna turn the walnuts off because they smell fine. Okay, I'm gonna put them in the oven at 375 for I'll set the timer for 20 minutes so that I don't forget about them and screw it all up. But I think they'll probably need about 30, especially given the fact that I overfilled these. So I'll check back in when they're done, hopefully. The muffins look gorgeous, and I'm excited to show you what they look like. And I promise they smell like Christmas, even though it's January. So I'm going to let these cool a little bit in the tin. Actually, let me check if they're even cooked. So I'm gonna take a toothpick and just stick it in the middle of one of them. Came out clean. Nice. Ooh, they smell so good. And I'm gonna do something controversial and just flip them. Maybe that's not controversial, but it feels like it is. And one little tough guy. So good. I'm tempted to even put like powdered sugar on them or some type of glaze or like maple syrup. Yum. It's not standard for me to eat a muffin without butter, but cheers to trial, error, and new things. Thank you for watching. I hope you found it fun. I hope you found it tasty. I hope you found it helpful. Whatever you needed, I hope you found it. Like and subscribe, and thanks for being here.